Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, look, number one. So on
Nice.
that top row, it's above
Fantastic.
and beyond. A lot of
Yep.
EDM people, Tiesto, Hardwell,
Yep. That's
NPR, All
amazing.
Songs
NPR.
Considered.
Yep.
Where is our
Very
good
cool.
friend Alan Cross? He should be on here somewhere.
I don't know. He goes up and down too. That Geeks and Beats thing.
Yeah, it depends on when an
Don't
episode is
call my
released
friend.
too. No, he's
Don't call
great.
my
I listen
friend.
to his show. I listen to him. And you're the
Very
first
cool.
guest on the show when we are number one.
So we will. Yeah, you will have to mention that.
This is Capsule on liveandlimbo.com. My name is Sean Chin, and this is an adventure into music, film, and pop culture. Today, I have the one, the only, my friend, Gilles LeBlanc, AKA Rockthusiast. How's it going?
Wow, that's quite the intro. It's going great. I'm doing a lot better after that intro. I won't lie to you, Sean. I'm great. How are you?
I am doing very well. It's very exciting because I guess in the afternoon after lunch, I went on to iTunes podcast section, and who's number one? This show.
I can only guess. Congratulations. That is awesome.
It goes up and down, and I guess it fluctuates on different variables like subscribers, downloads. But for this brief moment of time, what time is this now? February 20.
We're the 20th now.
4:11 p.m. We are number one, and you are the first guest with this number one status.
That is an honor, let me tell you. So
amazing,
fantastic. I am honored. I am honored.
I'm so honored to have you on. You're
but
review.
Well deserved.
Yes, thank you.
I must say, well deserved of that status, and probably won't be the last that it will be on. So
I hope not. But, well, the show's been on for a year now, so hopefully some traction has happened. And
nice.
you, of course, you wrote that great, brilliant review from the Nikki Yanofsky show, and she loved it.
Which she did like, yes, she did respond to it.
Shared it on her Facebook. I think it has over 500 likes as well. So
wow, nice,
good job to you. And I took some nice photos too.
You did take some great photos. Yes, it was a good time was had by all that night, and she put on a phenomenal show. I've actually been raving about it to several people that I've encountered along the way. She was great. I can't lie about that. So, but I think that comes through in the review. So
that's right.
liveandlimbo.com. Make sure to check it out.
And what's also interesting is that the what's it called? The Inquisitor picked it up too.
Yeah, which was kind of interesting.
They did it in a weird way. They never contacted you, right? But they spliced.
Yeah, but it's kind of like they spliced it, and from what I recall, they took it, and the way they framed it at first was sort of like, oh, here's just some guy's review. You know, this is what this guy thinks, and you know, it's like they framed it almost negatively, but then there was almost like an acknowledgement of the end. It's sort of like, hey, he had a great time, and this is all good for Nikki Yanofsky. So I wasn't 100% sure what was going on.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
I'm still waiting for my check on it. So
it wasn't like one quote either. It was like a good solid chunk of it.
Yeah, they pretty much took they did splice in a couple of other stuff. I think from she did like an interview with the Star that day too, or around that time. So I think they took some stuff from there, quotes that she used about Quincy Jones himself, and just spliced my review in with it. So, but it's good. It's expands the reach of.
How did that feel?
It felt a little weird. I've seen that before with some things that that I've written. That that's the beauty and the terrible thing about the internet. Sometimes is that really when it comes down to it, you have little to no control over things like that. So you can only control your message for so long. It's just. However, how I like to say is that things that I produce, I try for it to be of the highest quality. So I'm going to try to take it as a compliment that someone would want to take that and use it for something else. But just I think any person who, like yourself, who is a writer and a content creator. And in a lot of ways, you're a gatekeeper for a lot of stuff with liveandlimbo.com. But, you would think that when it comes around that credit giving credit where credit is due would be nice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And speaking of the internet being out of control, Iggy Azalea has quit Twitter.
No.
Yes.
This is new to me. So
Yeah, that happened today. I think after many months of rants between her and Azalea Banks, and then getting all this other crap from people around the world, she's handing over her account to her managers, which I think quite a few artists do, actually.
yeah, I think when it comes down to it, someone of that stature, or I guess who have she's achieved that status relatively fast. There does become a point where it's less them. Going back to controlling the message, it's less them that's delivering that message and more of, it's their handlers or it's other people, and then it becomes more of a promotional vehicle. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, totally. But let's get into the meat of this show. Okay, so two things. We're going to talk about Zane Lowe.
Yes.
And then we're going to talk about Toronto music festivals.
Oh, are we ever?
Okay, you can't see me, but I'm like moving my hands against each other.
Okay. Are you doing that because you're rubbing them with glee, or you're trying to stay warm?
Both, actually. Yeah, it's freezing cold here. Glee and warming up myself.
There you go. Sounds
all right,
good.
So you know who Zane Lowe is, right?
I do know who Zane Lowe is. I've never met the man and would love to someday, but just a very famous, well-known, well-renowned DJ for the BBC. And I guess the big news, I don't know if you want me to, introduce it, but
yes, you can,
I guess the big news being is that he will be leaving BBC, and he is joining the Apple crew. And everything that I've read so far, I guess it's an undisclosed role that he's doing so far.
Yeah, everything with Apple is undisclosed.
Exactly. But then when, of course, it eventually is revealed, it will be, hailed as the greatest thing ever. But this is the more I think about the story, the more I think it's really interesting, because Apple, for everything that they've done or everything that they have done in the music business, and there's been all these stories lately about how they just don't want to be a music company, or they don't want to be almost like a music host or whatever you want to call them these days. They literally want to control the entire industry, and I think maybe I don't know how big of a way, but this is a significant piece of it, because when you start to think of all the streaming services that have taken over in the past little bits, your Rdios, your Spotify's, songs, Google Play, like all of them, it's like they are more reliant on the technology as they are on human curation. So I think with this move is that, and Apple has sort of been waiting in the weeds. Like, they've always had iTunes, of course, but, they've been waiting in the weeds. And, we've heard rumors about, are they going to launch an Apple radio or iTunes radio or something along those lines? I think this is, going to be part of that big play, is that, they're bringing in someone with name recognition, like a Zane Lowe, but who also has that, extensive curation background. What's cool, like on BBC, he was always doing his, the hottest song of the week. And, there are countless artists who I think, become to know and love just by hearing him and, going by his word and what he says. So I think this is really significant of Apple trying to bring that and into this new kind of streaming world where, it's basically going to be what the future of radio is going to be.
I love that you made two extremely good points. The first is that this is a big deal. So I've talked to some of my friends here in Toronto, and I was surprised that most don't actually know who he is. I was kind of surprised by that. But this is like a big thing. Like, I have broadcast idols, and I'm sure you do too with Girth Radio and stuff. But Zane Lowe is like huge, and if you were to compare him to a post-tragic story of Gian Gomeshi, Zane Lowe is like 1,000 folds bigger than Gian ever was.
Yes. Well, agreed. And he's a fantastic. first of all, he's a fantastic interviewer. And I think what comes through, and not to say anything about Ghomeshi, because we've talked about that. And God knows we've talked about that long enough, recently. But the thing with Lowe is that he is legit. Like he is so believable when he talks to artists, and he's so knowledgeable. And, he comes across as that. I mean, if you're going to compare him to anyone in Toronto, so anyone in Canada or North America, the first kind of thing that comes to mind would be someone like an Alan Cross, has that knowledge, has that, that time that he's been in, but also, has a personality like I find like a Stromboli, you know what I mean? Who he's very personable when he's on the radio, and like you fall in love with his voice, and it's almost like you believe in what he's saying. So when he tells you, like Royal Blood, for example, are going to be the next huge British band, like, gosh darn it, you believe him, So, and just countless examples. And I think the thing that I like the most about him is that he, in a lot of ways, he came into a very difficult position because, of course, he essentially replaced the late great John Peel, who, for decades was, the main guy and the main, curator of everything that was cool and, hip and, the authority on rock and roll music. So, for him to have stepped into that and has pretty much filled those enormous shoes, and has continued and, has developed his brand based all on that I think it's just phenomenal. So, the fact that he has done all of this and is still getting bigger, has the potential to get bigger, I think it's just amazing. So, so good on him.
Yeah. And so I said the first point that you made that it was that he was a big deal. And the second one, you also nailed that it is all about curation. And he's interviewed so many people and has pinpointed the next big thing, as you said. And he's interviewed like Kanye West, Eminem, Jay-Z, all the big ones and all the new upcoming ones. So
exactly.
And you sent me this link from Billboard. Tell me about this link, about this story, and tell me what you think his role in Apple will be.
Well, it kind of just broke the news. Well, I don't know if it broke the news, but it just basically tried to summarize everything that they kind of knew. But that was like, I guess the interesting thing about it is that, we still don't really know what his role is going to be, and they even state that in the article. It was actually quite a long article when you think about it, but it never really got to the point of what it's actually doing or when he's even starting. Because I don't know if you know, but this being Friday that we're taping this, what day was it, Sean? Was it Wednesday or was it going back to Tuesday?
No, I think it might be Tuesday actually.
Yeah, well, that was the article, I think. But the next day, when Blur came back, he was the one who introduced them at their press conference in England. That's what I was getting at. So he still is technically with the BBC. And, they're still putting him in charge of doing big things like, hey, Blur is back. They're going to have a new album. Who can we get to, introduce this? Well, it has to be Zane Lowe. That's the only person. So, but yeah, I guess they did state that he will eventually move to California. From what I remember in the article is that he's not going to be at the Apple headquarters necessarily, but he's going to be somewhere close. But they mentioned a couple of things that they did mention is they mentioned the whole, kind of relationship between Jimmy Iovine, who's, now like in an executive position at Apple. They're still mentioning Dr. Dre and Beats, and how this all sort of it's all going to shake out.
So that's interesting because before, a little earlier, you mentioned iTunes Radio, and so they did acquire Beats Music and their headphone business. So we have so aside from like the music for a second, they've been assembling superstar teams in the fashion industry for the upcoming Apple Watch, and then other stuff for a rumored car. And they're focusing on as well as music. So they've acquired 3 super high profile people, Jimmy Iovine from Interscope and Dr. Dre, mogul in himself, and then Zane Lowe. So 3 powerhouses right there into what might be a revamp of Beats Music, or they might ditch that and just make it iTunes Radio.
Exactly. What are they going to call it? Like I've heard that rumor too, is that, and I think it was touched on in the article as well, that, Beats is just necessarily a name or a brand that they've absorbed, and it will turn into something else. Now, whether it's called iTunes Radio, who knows? Like they were pretty sketchy on those details.
I think they'll still keep iTunes. They can't lose that name. But what's interesting, Gilles, is that Spotify has the largest streaming subscribership right now. I think they have 18 million or something around that.
I can try to look up the numbers if you want, but yeah, it's something along those lines.
Either between 18 or 50 million. But anyways, so once this merger happens and this product or service is released, Beats Music or whatever their streaming service is will have automatically 500 million credit card numbers attached.
Well, yeah, just go by on what happened with the U2 album. Exactly. Like I think that was the number. It was like 400 million people or something had it instantaneously, something like that. But yeah, you're not off. But yeah, that really. Oh wow, that really is like a world domination kind of thing right there when it comes to music. And so, it's really interesting when you think about it, because, and it goes back to kind of what I was saying, like for so long it's all about technology, but now Apple is trying to bring back that human element, which I think is really cool. So,
and that's the point, because today Hypebot also released an article, which I will link in the show notes. That in this article about Zane Lowe, it says people don't want just discovery, and because they don't think they do, but they want curation. So algorithms and stuff they work okay. For me, they work okay on like RDO, but we need a human curator for it.
Exactly. We could only have so much. I was I was working on this. I was working on the anagram, but we've had enough of if RIYL, the whole recommended if you like, you know what I mean? And I know there's a lot of artists, I've even talked to artists, not to name names, but who have said that, they know that they've gotten fans from services like RDO and Spotify and, go down the list, just based on people listening to other bands and have discovered them. So, it is great in a way, but at the end of the day, you really do need, someone. And that's why I think radio is still relevant these days, because that's what it comes down to. You need that human voice that tells you, hey, like if you like this, and you like the music that we play here, you are going to like this. This is someone who we found, and, we're bringing it to you. So
I love seeing stuff like this unfold. Like I want to see their whole master plan come out.
Yes. Well, because the fourth person is going to be Sean Chin. So
oh yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
There you go. I know. Sure. Listen, I know you're keeping that under your hat for now. But,
how did you hear about that? It's
because
not on Mac Rumors yet.
Nice.
All right, let's talk summer music festivals. And I know you have so much to say about this, but how about we talk about what's already been announced, and then we'll talk about what may be announced, okay? So we'll start off with the first big one, which is CMW. Let me pull up this one. Okay, so CMW. We have, what do you think of this lineup? They have the Jesus and Mary Chain, Noel Gallagher, Billy Talent, and Always, and so much more, like Lights. But if you look at the set list yourself, not the set list, the lineup, what do you think?
Yep. You had me at Jesus, Mary Chain. They're one of my all-time favorites from way back. I love the Jesus Mary Chain, and I'm actually quite impressed with the lineup. I thought, when I first saw it, I was like, wow, they've actually kind of done it right, because, a lot of people have had a lot to say about things like CMW in the past, and for good reason,
Yeah.
And again, they're still not perfect, because say, for example, like a Noel Gallagher. Noel Gallagher is going to tour anyway, and is going to, he just happens to be playing Toronto at that time of year. So it's kind of like, like CMW will like take his name and tack it on top, but as a wristband, and I guess it's the kind of deal where just because you have a wristband, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily guaranteed access. I don't know if like that's part of their almost like wristband lottery or something. I don't know, but it's good to see that. But for me, the big one is the Jesus Mary chain. I think it's just fantastic. And so that they could, whether it's they reached out to them or, like they just happen to be touring anyway, the fact that they can have their names on the poster and they're celebrating the 30th anniversary of their debut album, Psycho Candy,
right.
is just fantastic for me. So I will definitely be at that show, so.
How do you think it compares to last year's CMW? Because I actually enjoyed last year.
I'm struggling to remember actually who was in like the lead positions.
Well, last year they had,
who were the headliners last year.
Last year I think it was more pop headlining. They had people like City and Color, Tegan and Sarah, MIA. Those were the top.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. That's right. Because and the thing was too, for some of them, like wasn't Metric on it as well, or was that the year before? But the Tegan and Sarah thing, they were all part. That was all part of like the Fan Fest or something that. They weren't going to play a long show anyway. And then, and the City and Color was like, as part of their Canada Center show. So I think, it's becoming more in line to something that, that fans will be able to attend. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I always, CMW was always more of like a mainstream kind of thing. I thought they were going to continue with that, but they went the other way and it was still impressive this year.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's been good. I think I was pretty impressed when I saw the initial lineup. How everything all shakes out is, I guess, still remains to be seen.
I don't know who's going to be in the Fan Fest though. Maybe Lights. Yeah, maybe Lights.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like they have all those little shows that are part of it, but from an industry conference perspective, it's huge, and you really can't beat it as someone who either tries to want to network or like attend conferences, and they always have like fantastic interviews lined up, for all that people want to complain about, the lineup and who they get, if you're actually part of the conferences that they have there, it really can't be beat.
Their conferences are great.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think it's still interesting that North by Northeast is not revealed.
Wait, hold on. Before we get there, that's a future not released.
Okay,
yet.
All right.
But before we get there,
getting ahead of myself. Sorry,
let's talk about some of the mid tier ones. So we have Field Trip by Arts and Craft, Alabama Shakes headlines that, and My Morning Jacket. What do you think of this one?
And we can. This can be all part of a bigger discussion, if you will. For me, so far, Field Trip is in my lead, as in best festival so far.
Really? Wow. Well, I'm looking really forward to the War on Drugs.
Yeah. No, they have a real. Someone has made the comment before. I don't want to take credit for this, but with all the rumors that were going on about the WayHome and, because there was this Bonnaroo I guess there is this Bonnaroo connection. WayHome kind of went in a different direction than, Bonnaroo lovers, I guess, are used to. And that vibe, if you want to call it, has really kind of transferred to Field Trip. Do you know what I'm saying? Because like My Morning Jacket, that's if you would have asked me to place a bet on who is going to be one of the top acts at the at that WayHome festival, I would have bet the farm literally on My Morning Jacket, and not Sam Smith. I can tell you that. So,
well, no, I thought the War on Drugs were going to be at the Bonnaroo Fest.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like those, you would think those type of bands would be there, but they're going to be at Field Trip. And Field Trip's lineup, I've always liked Field Trip's lineup. I find it's very, not to overuse a word, but I find it's always very well curated.
Well, that's to our good friends at Arts and Crafts.
Absolutely, absolutely. But they've expanded a little bit, and now they have Live Nation's help as well in terms of the booking. I don't know if I mean, just to say, I love Alabama Shakes. I'm really, really, really looking forward to this new album. I don't know if they're quite headliner status yet, but I think they're going to put on a great show. And that to me, that's an event that I'm really looking forward to.
I was surprised that Broken Social Scene wasn't headlining.
Kevin Drew is doing. Yeah, yeah, he's doing something with with Andy Kim.
Yes,
and so he is going to be there. But yeah, it's of course that's being a little bit of the joke is that this is the third year and both years they've headlined. But but I guess that plays into the. I thought it was an interesting lineup that they've put together. So there you go. But I'm sure all the members will show up in various forms that weekend.
Oh, so, for sure.
There you go.
And another festival is TURF, the Toronto Urban Roots Festival. So their lineup has not been announced yet, and we just want to remind our listeners that due to the Pan Am Games, TURF will not happen in the usual month of July. It'll be moving to September 18 to 20, I think it's okay.
Which is okay. I wasn't 100% aware of that, actually. I found that out, and I thought that was interesting because to me, I didn't think the Pan Am Games would be – well, I had heard things from people that saying, because of the Pan Am Games, there's going to be a lot of craziness that's going on in terms of, the Toronto festivals. And I'm like, I know the Pan Am Games are going to be big, or at least they hope it's big, the people that are organizing it, but I didn't realize it was going to be have that big of an effect on some of the things that are going in and around on the city, because you think about things that when the Olympics take place, for example, in different countries, music is usually a big element of it. So I thought that was maybe they're doing their own thing when the Pan-Americans are on. So I don't know. I have no idea. But I would think that something would be. I would think that something would be going on. So maybe that would affect. Yeah. Festivals that are going on. I'm not sure.
Totally. Sure. They're going to have some musical event there, but they could have partnered with TURF. I guess they want to do their own thing. Oh well.
Exactly. But it's still, correct me if I'm wrong, it's still going to be at Fort York, just like Field Trip is.
That's right, but in September.
Okay.
And I don't mind spreading it out.
No, I think that's fine, and it's a great venue. I personally really like the Fort York venue. I think it's really well done, and both festivals I think do a good job of using that space to its advantage. So,
all right, let's talk about kind of the cryptic newcomer here. We have a few months ago downtown there were posters saying "Do not come to the Great Hall," blah 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 blah. And then this got everyone to show up to the Great Hall.
Yes.
And what was it? It was the rumored and the very hyped.
Very rumored and very hyped.
The Bonnaroo affiliated WayHome Music and Arts Festival.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts on Sam Smith, Kendrick Lamar, Alt J headlining in Oro? I think it's Medonte, yeah.
Medonte,
Ontario.
I'm not 100% sure of the pronunciation.
Barry.
Exactly. It's Barry-ish. It's actually, from what I remember, it's a good 30 kilometers, sort of northeast of Barrie, so it's considered part of the Barrie area. But anyway, well, this is interesting. Not to plug, I guess, my own kind of work, but for another publication, actually, our mutual.
You can tell us, yeah.
Well, our mutual friend Alan Cross. I had the opportunity to interview the VP of business development for that new site, which is it's called Burles Creek in Oro Medonte. So basically, long story short is, well, I'll try to make this a long story short. This is a site that had been used in the past for other events. They had a Jack Johnson concert there that attracted like 30,000 people in, I want to say 2008. In and around that area. It may have been later. But the big one that I remember is that they wanted to have, I guess it ended up being the last Virgin Festival. They wanted to have it there after Virgin Festival had moved from the Toronto Islands.
That was so sad.
Yeah, because I like the Toronto Islands and I like the Virgin Festival when it was around. So this was in 2009. They wanted to make it a camping festival, and so they were going to have it out in this Burles Creek, and the lineup in retrospect was actually pretty darn good. Like, I mean, it was at their time it was going to be Nine Inch Nails' last ever show in Canada, on their farewell tour, and it ended up being like their third or fourth last ever show. But the thing is that nobody wanted to go to this. So they ended up, because of the lack of tickets that were sold, because of the location and everything, they ended up moving the whole thing to the Molson Amphitheater, and they had it there, and
I remember that.
And the rest is sort of history. And then the Virgin Fest, the Virgin Fest kind of quietly went away, and there's there are reasons for that, but I mean anyway. So this is, I guess, their kind of big comeback to want to revitalize that site, because I am of a certain age where
You're 29, right?
Absolutely. I just celebrated my 29th birthday for the fourth time, I believe. So thank you. But I can remember going to, a younger me can remember going to Molson Park in Barrie many, 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 many times. And I loved it as a venue, but times have changed kind of. That was when nothing really was in and around Toronto, and all your big shows were being hosted at Molson Park. Whether it be, they had, oh my goodness, they had Lollapalooza that was there. The Tragically Hip would always have like a Canada Day concert there. Our Lady Peace's Somersault tour was there. Edgefest, you name it, everything was held in Molson Park and Barrie. So it was a rite of passage basically to go in and up to that area. Of course, the site's been sold and they haven't had anything there, and it's been redeveloped since. But anyway, so this interview that I did for Alan Cross's site with the VP of Business Development there is that, they want to take that spirit that, of people going to Molson Park and having such a great time and that experience, and they want to move it to this new area. And the thing with them is that they want to be here to stay. Like, that's the big takeaway that I got from the interview of with this person, is that they're not just here for a one and out kind of festival.
Just to correct, this is the venue manager, not the festival manager, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct for the actual.
Because they have had Boots and Hearts and I think CMT, which only lasted a year.
Well, that's the thing. Now,
country music.
Correct. So basically, the Boots and Hearts Festival, just to correct a little bit, Boots and Hearts for the last couple of years has been up in Bowmanville, I believe, like at their racetrack. So this Burles Creek, I think it's called the Burles Creek Event Grounds. They are under, as they say, they are under new management, which are these people who, this person who I talked to, the VP there. And what they've done is they've actually, I don't know if purchase is the right word, but the Boots and Hearts Festival is now kind of like that's going to be their new home now for the conceivable future, for the long term. And now, but it's not going to be the only festival that's going to be there. And this one was actually not even on the radar when I talked. The WayHome Festival was not even on the radar when I was talking to this guy. The rumors actually started coming after I talked to him, because I had asked him about, is Lollapalooza coming back? That's the one that I had kind of heard. Mm-hmm. So now we have this WayHome Festival. And I think, and so to sort of get back on track here, I think the job that they did introducing it with those cryptic posters saying, don't come to the Great Hall, the event that they actually had at the Great Hall, which, unfortunately I wasn't able to go to, but how they teased people there and then rewarded certain people with either, free passes to this year or even lifetime passes, I think is a great sign to show everybody that, like, hey, we're here, like kind of like I was saying, we're here for the long haul. This isn't going to be just come up for 1 year and then, do whatever. Like, they want to be here long term because they know that, the business of music festivals is doing very well. But it's not just about, it's kind of the point that I want to get at. It's just not about having like a great lineup. It's come for the whole experience.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, I was lucky enough last summer to have gone to the Pemberton Music Festival, the revived Pemberton Music Festival. And let me tell you, even though they had an amazing lineup, Nine Inch Nails was there, but it was all about the setting that you were in, and you look over your shoulders, and like, my God, like there's like a freaking mountain range there, and this is like the most beautiful setting I've ever been in. Like, it's all about that, and experiencing the local culture, like the homegrown food, and just meeting new people and all these people coming together. I think that's really what they're trying to capture, and I wish them the best of luck about it, over it.
I hope so. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I want them to do well. It's just, I see the lineup and it's kind of like, this is not a lineup. And then I bring it back to the Virgin Festival experience in 2009. It's sort of like, well, if this many people didn't want to go up there and potentially camp to see Nine Inch Nails' last show in Canada, like, who's going to do it for Sam Smith?
Well, I think
no offense to him, but
he's not that. I don't know. He's a good guy. He's a good singer, but he's not the ideal top energetic super powerhouse headliner yet.
Exactly. And I guess for me, there were all these rumors going around that, and especially that day that they were doing the event at the Great Hall. Like, I had heard that, Eddie Vedder was in town and he was going to show up, and, and then Pearl Jam were going to be the headliners.
I know who you wanted, Jules. You wanted Jack White.
Well, I always want Jack White for everything. I want Jack White to headline every festival.
So I just want to say, I feel sorry for our Sarah Ricks. Poor girl. She opened her envelope, got a free ticket, but not the lifetime pass.
Well, she got what she deserved, that girl. I'm just kidding. But I actually know a couple of people who
they waited.
That waited and got lifetime passes, and I think that's just fantastic. So how they introduced this to the general public, I think is fantastic, because the buzz that they generated that night for it, and the partnership that they've obviously been doing with having Indie 88 help promote it and stuff, I think they've done a really, really, really good job with it. So again, this is not sort of hatred or anything. Like, it's not really that. Like, I wish these people the best of luck, because I want to see festivals take hold in the city and the area that I love, prosper, thrive, for it to be something that years from now I can say that I
want as many festivals as possible.
Exactly. Yeah, there's room for them all. The boutique ones and the major ones. It's just, I see the lineup and I'm like, there's all sorts of bands that were like, okay, oh great, they've got Always and Mets, okay, like they're all from Toronto. We can see them anytime we want, it's like, and I know you mentioned Sarah. Sarah loves Kendrick Lamar.
I think Kendrick Lamar they should be a headliner for this show, for a 3-day event. They should be one. He should be one for sure. I'm not sure about Sam Smith or Alt J though.
Yeah, no, Alt J. Yeah.
They could be on the card, but not the headline. I hope there's more headliners.
Exactly. Well,
I was hoping for Radiohead.
Radiohead were rumored too. Radiohead would have made sense because they had a new album coming out. It's just, again, this kind of goes back to even the interview that I had with this person, the impression that he gave to me was that, again, we're going to be in here for the long haul, and we're going to go big with this, because when you think about a market like Toronto, there's already so much competition that goes for, your entertainment and your music festival dollar. Like it's not like there are no festivals that are around here that, that we have choices to. Plus we have the things like the Molson Amphitheater, and, like AC/DC is going to be here in September. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
there's so many things that are going on. So to me, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, Sam Smith just played here 2 days ago. I guess, I'll go see him in the summer.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to camp out for 4 days to see him. So you know what I mean? It's just,
that's their hardest thing, is to get people out there. Yes.
Yeah. So again, I wish them the best of luck. I really do wish them the best.
Yes.
But for me, this lineup did not do it for me.
No.
Now, I admit
this is their first year.
It is their first year, and I realize that I'm not necessarily in the target audience for it. But I'd like to think that I know a couple of things about acts that can potentially bring in a diverse crowd. And the ones that we've kind of mentioned, Jack White aside, Jack White would have been great, but
you would have totally gone.
I would have gone for Jack. I would have gone for Jack White, but I would have been extremely ecstatic with a Pearl Jam, Radiohead, even a Coldplay,
Oh my
Coldplay
God,
headline. I'd be like, that'd be amazing, So, and there are tons of acts that you can think. I heard Prince. I'd be like, okay, Prince, that would have made total sense.
Well, we'll save some predictions for a little later, because we have another festival to discuss.
Okay.
But so to close off WayHome, if you want tickets and for a promotional purpose, we are giving away 2 general admissions passes to the whole weekend. You just have to go to lil.fm/win WayHome. That's catchy.
Nice. Very catchy. Very catchy for a short link.
Thank you. I thought of it myself.
Very nice. Very nice.
All right.
No,
so
and again, and in all seriousness, just to end, I guess, sort of with that, the final kind of point is that, not encourage people to go out there, because if it's anything like the experience that I had in Pemberton, it'll totally be worth it.
Totally worth it. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So by all means, everybody should enter your contest. So
let's talk North by Northeast. Okay.
All right.
What's up with this? They're supposed to be releasing their lineup maybe next week or in the week.
Maybe.
Or 2.
Wouldn't Sarah know? You can't twist Sarah.
No, I can't. No, I can't do that to her. But okay, let's say since we don't know what it is, and we have no idea what it could be, who do you want to see there except Jack White?
That's interesting. That's really interesting, because North by Northeast has been the kind of thing where you never really know, until
their lineups are always different. It's not usually mainstream stuff. It's like abstract, high end.
Yeah, exactly. But they do have the Young Dundas series, which has always delivered, has always been good. Like a couple of years ago, they had the National. What a fantastic choice that they had.
St. Vincent last year.
St. Vincent was amazing. And even Spoon.
Yes.
And then who, of course, played the night before at the Horseshoe. So there's always sort of things that are going to be going on. But now I guess it's kind of interesting when you think that here are some relatively big acts like Noel Gallagher and Jesus Mary Chain and people of that nature who are playing the month before. None of them conceivably can play North by Northeast. So it'll be really interesting to see who of that ilk will sort of be around. And I start to think about things because, of course, they're in June. I forget the exact dates, but North by Northeast is usually like June, early to mid-June. Yes. Yeah. So I start to think about festivals that are in and around that time, like New York's Governor's Ball. But you can't really look at those and say, those headliners are going to appear at North by Northeast, because you're thinking like the Black Keys. I know are some headliners. They wouldn't necessarily fit the bill, but the one that keeps coming back to mind, which would be absolutely amazing in a setting like Young Dundas Square would be Bjork. I think
Oh
you'd
my
agree.
God, that would be
So
totally amazing. So
because
yeah,
she's on, yeah,
North by
she's
Northeast
on.
is June 17 to 21. So they do have
Yeah,
a date, just no lineup yet. But
yeah,
Bjork, that's interesting because she was at V Fest 2007, I think.
yep.
And that was totally bananas.
And she still puts on the best show. Like it's just an amazing show.
So you
So
think it should be Bjork?
I would love to see Bjork there.
I'm surprised no one has booked, none of these festivals have booked D'Angelo yet. He could be one.
He'd be very interesting too. Yeah, yeah. But no, he hasn't. Really? Wasn't he on? No, he's not on that Shaky Knees festival in Atlanta, is he?
No, I'm well.
No? Okay.
I'm not sure, but here in Canada,
Okay. No, 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 no. Of
yeah,
course, yeah, no.
nothing
No,
about
he's not.
him yet, which is
So,
surprising actually.
but then he really hasn't. He hasn't really announced a tour or anything yet, has he?
No,
Okay. Well,
he
maybe
just
we'll get
played
it.
SNL.
That's true. That's true. Well, maybe we'll get our Bjorg, and maybe Radiohead will even show up too. So I don't know, but there's a little thing like I don't know, like North by Northeast. I think what's great about North by Northeast is that it's almost like an elevating kind of festival. Like
Yes,
you'll take I don't know, I don't want to sound demeaning, but you'll take lower tier kind of acts and you'll give them more of like
the spotlight.
exactly the spotlight and kind of like a vaulting kind of stage. So for me, loving my two-piece garage rock, I know that Japan Droids are probably
Oh yeah,
in line for a new album around this time. So I would love to see, and they haven't been seen in anywhere else on any other festivals. I would love to see them make their triumphant return, even though it's not necessarily in their hometown, but I'd love to see them make a big comeback of sorts at North by Northeast this year.
absolutely. Hey, you know that Live in Limbo's named after a Radiohead song, right? In
Sure.
Limbo,
I
yes.
do now.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
to see them again would bring it full circle. Unfortunately, the last time they came, something tragic happened. So
Yes, that's true.
yes.
That's
All right.
true.
So there's another out of nowhere. Actually, I think we were the first ones to actually tweet it because
Okay.
I woke up randomly on like Sunday morning or Monday morning. Sunday. I think it was Sunday. The long weekend. No, Monday. Yes, definitely Monday. There's no way I would have woken up early on a Monday. But anyways,
right.
so that was long weekend, family day Monday. I woke up. It was
Yes.
like 7. I'm going on Facebook. I'm like, why is Embrace Presents Facebook
Yes.
icon like yellow? And it said Bestival. So I'm like, what's going on
Festival.
here? I start Googling stuff and I find the YouTube vid that has like 2 views. So I'm like, oh, something's going to happen. So I posted out there and then a few hours later, boom,
Breaking
there's
news.
Bestival.
Good work, Sean Chin. That's awesome.
That was by luck. Bestival is coming. So they're a huge festival in the UK. I'm going to say
Yes, they
closer
are.
to the dance side.
Yes, yes.
And did this come to a surprise to you?
Yeah, well, in a lot of ways, if there's always been rumors, I guess, about UK and well-known like international kind of like festival brands coming to North America. And you see that you've seen it before, and like it gets rumored. I wouldn't have. If you would have asked me, to pick one to think, well, which one would come to Toronto? I don't know if Bestival would be on the list, but I think it's a great choice because it kind of leans toward more of the dance, and I don't know if you want to necessarily lump it into the EDM category, but it's but it leans on side, and I think variety is kind of like the spice of life. You know what I mean? So I would rather see a festival like that rather than 4 different WayHome kind of festivos,
Totally.
and we're kind of getting that when you think about it, with Turf, Field Trip, North by Northeast, there does seem to be a little bit of a I don't know if overkill is the right word, but you know what I mean. Like there does seem to be a bit of saturation in the market. So to have something like a Bestival, which will also have like indie and alternative acts playing in main roles. I think it's a great choice. And but what's really interesting about it is that they are coming back to the Toronto Islands.
That's right. Yes.
Which is where the Virgin Festival was, which, in a lot of ways is an amazing setting. It fits that, 20 to 30,000 kind of crowd, which will make it look great visually. It's just, getting there and back can be a bit of a challenge at times. So,
from what I've seen, it looks more like a carnival, like Burning Man in California.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
kind of like that. So here's a question for you. So V-Fest was driven away from Toronto Island because of local people living there complaining about the noise, and WayHome is also getting this kind of heat as well, like even before it starts. So people that live around the area are trying to kill these festivals. What are your thoughts?
Well, to go back to my interview with the person at the Burles Creek thing, see, that stuff, those complaints, you're always going to get those. And I sort of addressed it a little bit before knowing that, people had actually started organizing, protest groups. And this person just couldn't stress enough to me that that corporation, the site, are doing everything that they possibly can to be in line with, with the city councils and with, everything that they need to do so that as many residents as possible not only are aware of what's going on, but are on board with what's going on. Because at the end of the day, and actually, I can send you an article that I saw actually today about how for that area, for example, the Oro Mandante, the amount of complaints that are going to be registered aren't even going to come close to the amount of money and, revenue and interest that's going to be generated for the area, the positiveness that's going to come out of it. You're always going to get, the occasional yahoos, and, even to go back to Pemberton, there was a death that happened, the day that, over the weekend, where I was staying. So you're going to unfortunately get incidences like that, but I think the benefits absolutely outweigh any negatives that may happen.
But what happened to V-Fest? They got pushed out.
Yeah, well, that's part of it too, because there are residences that are there, and just ask, Porter Airlines and the airport there, like what the troubles that they've had with residents and trying to, establish a business or trying to establish something commercial and business-like in an area that, people just really want peace and quiet. And the first year, I don't know if you remember. I know you're a youngin.
That's the one with the Strokes, right?
The Strokes were actually, I think, we're in 2008. Yeah. Well, in the first year, which was, I think, either 2005 or 2006.
No, hold on. I think 2007 was definitely the Bjork one.
Yes.
And then
you're right about
2008
that.
was
the Strokes.
No. I think the 2008 one was.
Oh, no.
Smashing Pumpkins or something.
I'm pretty sure the Raconteurs were there at 2006 the Raconteurs were there. Oh, goodness. Anyway, the point that I want to try to make is that whatever the first year was, whether it was 2005 or 2006, Flaming Lips were supposed to headline one night. And they were having difficulties, as festivals often do, with set times running late. But they had an 11 o'clock curfew, no ifs, ands, or buts. And I think Flaming Lips were allowed to play 10 minutes, and they just pulled the plug.
Oh yeah.
Because they wanted to, so they take it that seriously, and and I know that's been a case with going back to almost like Fort York. Fort York has a strict curfew because there are the condo developments that are in the area. So I mean, it is challenging when you think about it. That you have to really balance the wanting to have this gigantic party. And with that comes with loud music, and
these are going to be the real outgoing people at Bestival.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. Now, from what I understand, it's not necessarily where V Festival used to be held.
Not on the Olympic Island. It's
Yeah,
on Handley's
it's
Point.
more in Hanlon. Yeah, exactly, which is more of a beach and a quieter kind of area. So we'll see. Again, I think it's great that they are coming, and that they are here. And I only wish them the best, because I'm like you, Sean. I want to see as many festivals as possible in Toronto,
Totally.
but not the kind of like one and out kind of thing. Like I want to see actual franchises develop here that we
Legacies,
can look forward to everywhere. Exactly.
So they do not have a lineup yet, which is kind of concerning because it's in June 10 or something. So that's like right around the corner, and they don't have a lineup yet. But we can look on their UK festival site, which is in September. So they have people like Chemical Brothers, Underworld, Duran Duran, Tame Impala, Jungle. Who else they have?
Isn't My Bloody Valentine playing?
Yeah, let me see.
Or was that last year?
I don't see that.
I'm not sure.
But
My
Bloody
Valentine would be great.
They have decent names there.
Yeah.
Who would you want to see at this kind of show? I think actually Bjork might fit better into this show.
I was just going to say, and it'll be interesting to see, because it's smack around that North by Northeast time. So, you're not going to have...
Yeah, just like a week before North by Northeast, I think.
Yeah, so they can't play both fests. So, I would kind of expect that, names that we would think for North by Northeast could easily transfer to this Bestival concert. So I could completely see Bjork headlining it. I don't know something about it, because it's going to be smaller in scale, obviously, than the UK one. So I don't know if a Duran Duran would be someone that would necessarily come over to play, but like a headlining kind of like DJ set by someone along the lines of the Chemical Brothers would be pretty cool. I think
that would be great.
Or like that that Blur band, if they wanted to come, hey, why not?
Do you think they will? Do you think they will? Since it's an Embrace event, do you think they'll merge Time Festival with this one?
I guess that's a possibility. Has Time even been announced for this year?
No, not yet.
I know they were having problems. I know they had like problems last year.
Well, that's because of the rain.
Yeah, and
Did you ever see that Instagram picture of us? We had me, Stephen McGill, Sarah, and Tiana. All of us in our ponchos and sad face.
And sad faces, yeah. There you go. Yeah, I could see something like that, especially because Embrace is involved, and that it's part of their portfolio. So yeah, I could totally see.
So that. I understand. I can see in the back of the other festival promoters' minds, they could be a little worried with all these festivals going on, taking away ticket sales from them. But as a concert goer, I love this. I think everyone wins here.
Yes, absolutely. I think choice is good, and I think it may have even been we've been promoting her a lot on this show. But Sarah Ricks, she actually had a really good comment that she threw out on Twitter, talking about this festival. If you want to call it festival overkill, but I mean,
it's definitely not overkill. It's fun.
It's fun, yeah. In our business and for what we like to talk about, it's absolutely fun. But really, when it comes down to it, is that you are not going to get. If you think about it, like sure, WayHome would have been nice if they would have had Jack White, Pearl Jam, and Prince as their headliners, but that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? You are not going to have a super mega festival in Toronto, especially in a market like Toronto. And it's not even a matter of spreading yourself thin. You're going to have, your WayHomes. You're going to have your turf. You're going to have your, you're going to have your field trips. You're going to have the multi-day events like North by Northeast. And it really comes down to consumers' choice. It's just these organizers are putting their best lineups together. And that comes with some challenges too about, not everybody can play all the festivals that they want. So artists are going to have to pick and choose. And then when it comes down to it, like the consumer is going to have freedom of choice to, either want to experience all of them or, really pick and choose which ones they want to be at. Like for me, for example, I see this variety of competition and I say, okay, field trip so far is looking really good to me. maybe if I would have been lucky enough to get a lifetime pass, I would have given WayHome a try. But you're gonna have to wow me next year with your lineup, and you just might. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, no, I think it's a real boon, for music and for especially for Toronto that
And
we have all this variety.
so, yes. And so for the last, I guess, elephant in the room is, where is that rumored Lollapalooza festival?
That is a great question.
What have you heard?
Well, what I had heard is a while ago, so I'm going by old rumors. Now, how this first came out was that I believe it was at Turf last year.
Yes.
That because I used to write for Consequence of Sound, and I know that a writer from Consequence of Sound was up in Toronto and got an interview with Jeff Cohen, who of course owns the Horseshoe, Lee's Palace, and is the main guy behind.
Yeah.
Collective, yeah, and he's the main guy behind Turf, obviously. And he had a great interview with him. Look it up on Consequence of Sound if you'd like. And he pretty much dropped the bombshell, kind of like unprovoked, saying like, "Yep, Lollapalooza is coming into the market next year." So which I guess took a lot of people by surprise. Now, to go back to our friend Sarah, she actually threw out a comment on Twitter by saying, "Well, maybe Mr. Cohen actually got his major U.S. festivals mistaken, and he mistook Bonnaroo for Lollapalooza," which could very well be the case because really there's been nothing really else.
But it can't be because he's with Collective, and this one, and WayHome is with Republic Live. So I don't think he could have crossed that. He couldn't have made a mistake.
I don't know, but I haven't heard much. Now, Lollapalooza did announce that they're having a festival in Berlin. I believe it's Berlin. They're having Lollapalooza Berlin. Now, this wouldn't be unlike them because they've expanded to other places as well. Like the South American Lollapaloozas are coming up. They tried, I believe it was last year or the year before, to actually have one in Israel that unfortunately fell apart. But they are doing Berlin this year. Now, the big rumor that I had heard, and go on this for what you will, was that it didn't want to necessarily compete with Osheaga, which takes place the same weekend as Lollapalooza in Chicago. So the big rumor that I had heard was that keeping in line with festivals like Coachella and Austin City Limits, who are now spreading their lineups over 2 weekends, that Lollapalooza was going to do the same. So basically you would have Lollapalooza Chicago one weekend, and then the week after would be the same lineup, but it would be somewhere in Toronto. That's the rumor. That's the big rumor that I had heard. So that they wouldn't necessarily compete with Osheaga in Montreal. I have heard nothing else, but Lollapalooza's lineup typically drops in and around, the end of February, usually.
Ooh, and we're around that time.
We are around that time now. Usually, the writers in Chicago. There's one in particular, Mr. Greg Cott, a writer in Chicago. He usually leaks the headliners well ahead of time. So by like end of January, early February, we know who the headliners are. And for the last 3 years, he's nailed it each time.
Has he said anything?
I have not heard. That's the thing. I have not heard anything. And it has been remarkably quiet. Now, I don't know if that's because, bigger things
it's
are
definitely
necessarily
Radiohead.
happening. Or it could be just Radiohead. But, the silence has been kind of eerie, but that could be also that, that could also speak to that there's been this influx of festivals that almost like the attention is kind of taken away from Lollapalooza. Do you know what I mean?
They're waiting for the right time for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So, but historically, it's been in the last. It's usually been, in and around this time. Now, but also speaking of Osheaga, like I was saying before, you probably saw they leaked, but they announced 10 acts that are playing for their 10th anniversary that weekend in August, like end of July, early August. But they also specifically said that the rest of the lineup is coming March 24th, which I found was actually pretty late for them because they usually announce their lineup before Lollapalooza's.
Who did they announce so far?
From what I remember, the ones that stuck out in my mind were Run the Jewels, Interpol, Caribou also, but it's
Still no headliner.
no big headliner, no. But when Foo Fighters initially announced their touring, Montreal was surprisingly omitted from the list. And if you check your touring schedule, it's pretty much, it looks very favorable for the Foos to play Montreal in and around that time. So that's who I would guess as a headliner. Yes. But they were not mentioned in that initial reveal. So it'll be interesting. It's a fun topic of discussion.
What are your thoughts on fall festivals?
Fall festivals?
Maybe suppose Lollapalooza just moved their Toronto one to the fall. Would that be okay?
I'm okay with spreading the year around. I always thought, now Sean, I've been bugging you for venture capitalist money,
yes.
About stuff. But I always thought that because warm weather tends to stick around, it's been sticking around later and later and later in the year. I've always thought, especially for Toronto, why hasn't someone come up with almost like a Thanksgiving weekend festival to take advantage of that? You know what I mean? It wouldn't have to be in a stadium or in a field kind of venue, but yeah, it's always nice weather. Yeah, or something. Yeah, or take people out. Make it a destination festival. I always thought that Thanksgiving would be a good time for a festival. But you look at things and they're coming later and later. Like for example, AC/DC. Their show is September 10th, I believe. They've already announced for Downsview, but it's past the technically the summer period and kids are already back to school. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yes. Riot Fest tends to take place, which we haven't really heard anything from either, but that tends to take place, in that mid to late September period. So yeah, I'm all for, spreading things around. It doesn't all have to be concentrated in the summer because those, those weekend dates are valuable in the summer. So why not?
We should have at least 4 to 5 festivals per every quarter season. That would be cool.
I agree 100%. Yes.
All right. Yeah, that was a great episode. That was very informative and very inspiring. And I look forward to the summer now. I'm in festival mode now.
I'm feeling warmer already, Sean.
Where can all of our listeners find you, good sir?
These days, the best place to find me is on just follow me on Twitter at Rockthusiast, and I will always post my link to my work there. So awesome. Twitter's always the best. Okay. So.
And you can follow myself at Sean Chin and this show at Live in Limbo. And now you should definitely go to iTunes and subscribe to our show, our currently number one show. Please do that. Leave 5 stars and leave a review. And of course, you can find the show notes at liveinlimbo.com/capsule. Take care, everybody.